Chapter 3, Types of Reincarnation, Part 4, Yibum, Yibum, versus Reincarnation. However, the level of Yibum is not like this. The reason being that he reincarnates for a different reason. When it comes to the rest of the sins of the Torah, rectification can be achieved through suffering in this world or Jahannam. Footnote 149, Purgatory after death. Therefore, all of the sparks of the Nefesh to not need to reincarnate except as an Ibur, as mentioned, the specific spark alone reincarnates. Footnote 150, that is, only the ones still in need of rectification. However, someone who comes beside Ibum does so because he died childless. He is like someone who was completely unsuccessful, as if he was never in the world and the first body never existed, as it says in Parashas Vayeshev. My note, uh, something like an angel who isn't meant to know the daughters of men out of obedience to God. Therefore, it is necessary that the nephesh from the first body, with all of its portions, return and reincarnate completely at that time anew for its own sake. This second body, born from Yibum, will be his main body, and after rectification and death from this world, at that at the time of the resurrection of the dead, the nephesh will return only in it. He will not enter the first body, only the spirit that he left in his wife. As footnote 151, when the brother-in-law performs Ibum with his deceased brother's wife, the spirit that the first husband left in her leaves and returns to its place. It returns, however, during the resurrection of the dead in its original body that died without leaving children. As mentioned in Sabah of Mishpatim, the difference has now been explained between someone who died childless and returns beside Ibum, and one who dies because of the rest of the sins of the Torah and reincarnates as arranged, and not through Ibum. All the details mentioned also apply to Ruach and Neshama in the same manner as explained regarding the sparks of the Nefesh. I think the interest in a brother, if a brother has passed away without producing a child, if your brother has passed away before producing, I assume, any child, or possibly a child that he would have produced had he not passed away, uh, his his brother is asked to produce a child with the wife that he took, the wife that he had, whether it's indirectly or directly by giving semen over, because you never know which one it'll be, or by actually marrying her and having sex with her, as she agrees, if she agrees. Then you can, in effect, skip the line that must be there for a soul to come down and find the right body to attach to rectify. It's just a time period where there are many good people who you can come down and attach yourself to and hopefully help them in some good. And who do you get? If there are all these great personalities who are in heaven from the prophets and the great men of old and women of old, won't they want those top persons like Elon Musk or a president or a queen or someone like that? Wouldn't they get them to work together to improve their lives? So it may be that there are not enough spirits uh, useful enough, nor enough converts upon the earth to Judaism to provide an avenue for these souls to return and assist them in their lives, and also gain some rectification themselves or greater benefits. So they're asking that you produce a child so that soul can come through and be rectified according to this belief. There is another difference between. I read that. So we're so therefore the Ruach. I'll just go up here. There is another difference between Yibum and reincarnation, which was mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. Since for someone who reincarnates beside Yibum, the first body is considered as if it never existed at all. As mentioned, and for this reason, the Nefesh must reincarnate with all of its parts as discussed. It is literally like a new creation. Therefore, the Ruach and Neshama will reincarnate with it, the three of them together. Footnote 152. Technically speaking, this is not the Nefesh's first opportunity at rectification, which normally means that a person must first die before receiving the next level up of soul for rectification, as explained in Chapter 2. However, since the first body is considered as if it didn't exist, the second body is viewed as the first incarnation and therefore is able to reincarnate with its Ruach and Neshama as if for the first time. The assumption is that it did very well in this life by not producing children and not being married. You don't run into some of the difficulties and sins of a man who has to sustain a household or a woman who has to raise children and uh, be in a relationship with a man. If you were single and didn't uh, produce children, you lived a very different life, very likely, uh, except for a few. Though uh, that might just be your first time as an angel on earth, and you come back and get a dense body so you can participate like everyone else. And again, there are ways that do not require intercourse to have children. For anyone who's listening who is gay or lesbian, or that whole spectrum there, you can become pregnant without having intercourse, and you can cause someone to become pregnant without intercourse. I prefer dropper method. You ejaculate semen into a glass. You take a stopper or some kind of teardropper or something. What do you call that? A water dropper. Absorb the material, the semen, and then she takes it and enters it into her body. And you see if she becomes pregnant, if this is the right time, if the right sperm got to its place, you have a child. So you can. This is for people who, gay or straight, lesbian, or whatever else, decide not to have children, even though there are those options there for them. Since for someone who reincarnates beside Yibum, the first body is considered as if it never existed at all, as mentioned, and for this reason the nefesh must reincarnate with all of its parts as discussed. It is literally like a new creation. Therefore, the Ruach and Neshama will reincarnate with it, the three of them together. Footnote 152. Technically speaking, this is not the Nefesh's first opportunity at rectification, which normally means that a person must die before receiving the next level up for soul, receiving the next level up of soul for rectification, as explained in chapter 2. However, since the first body is considered as if it didn't exist, the second body is viewed as the first incarnation and therefore is able to reincarnate with its Ruach and Neshama as if for the first time. However, this will not occur at one time, only when he merits to perform mitzvos appropriate for the Ruach will the Ruach enter him. It is likewise for the Neshama. It is like what was mentioned above at the beginning of the discussion regarding the first time a person comes into this world. as spoken about in Sabah of Mishpatim. If he merits more, they give him a nesh. If he merits more, they give him a ruach. If he merits more, they give him a neshama, on up to the others, etc. It is not the case in a reincarnation, as will be explained. Thus, someone who returns Besalt Ibum is like a new creation, and he is able to receive the three of them, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, at one time, according to his actions. My note, be a vow of John, Catholic priest, no children born to you. You incarnate again with all of your merits, but it will be as if it were your first incarnation and likely cause you to live an above average existence. No children. Oh, just having no children is required, not Catholicism. But they're just the best example. And it's not that you go become a Catholic priest, maybe you do. And that's a wonderful thing as well. But it's that you study people like the Jesuits or the Benedictines or others who live this way and figure out uh, what their school models are, how they live their lives, or how they get through it. For instance, it is perfectly fine to mimic the successful organizations of an entity without adopting its base philosophy. Even though people may call this uh, cultural appropriation, it is cultural appropriation. You've offered the world an example of your culture, and I'm going to appropriate the best parts of it. Uh, up to the parts that I can. You may, though, this is why we have certain phrases and handshakes and things like that, because there are certain things that can't be appropriated because they're genetic. However, if a person finds that they can mimic a lot of it, uh, there could be some benefit to them in their community. Thus, someone who returns Besod Ibum is like a new creation, and he is able to achieve the three of them, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, at one time, according to his actions. This is the Sod, my note, Sod, be Subab, be, be Subab in Arabic means because. This is the Sod of the verse. If he were to set his heart against him, he would simply gather in his Ruach and his neshama to himself, Eov or Jove 34:14, which is elucidated to be about the matter of Yibum and Saba'a Mishpatim. And my note, Sabab Mishpatim, the reason not to be a father of children. Uh, Not the pamphlet convincing you not to be a father of children. No, the reason that some people choose not to be a father of children. That's what Sabbat Mishpatim would mean. Uh, Patim, yeah, Mishpatim. Sabbat Mishpatim. Okay, footnote 153. The simple explanation of the verse is that it is talking about God and how he has no reason to pervert justice. For if God wants to end a person's life, he need only take back a person's ruach and neshama and not make him suffer unnecessarily, as Eve claimed had become his lot. The sod of the verse, however, is that it refers to someone who has reincarnated the sod yibum into a second body, and the ruach and neshama to which the verse refers is a reference to how someone who returns besod yibum can do so with his ruach and neshama as if it is his first incarnation. The explanation is as stated. Just as the brother in law has the ability to return a portion of the nefesh of his father, this might, it should read brother because you cannot marry your father's wife or be she your biological mother or some other mother. some other woman, according to the negative mitzvot of Moses ben Maimonides. So it should say, um, the explanation is as stated, just as the brother-in-law has the ability to return a portion of the nefesh of his brother in this world through Yibum. Oh, well, I will just read it as it's stated. But just as the brother-in-law has the ability to return a portion of the nefesh of his father, ah, the brother-in-law to the woman, not the brother-in-law. So again, you cannot be with your mother, even if she's not your birth mother. But the brother-in-law of the woman whose husband died is who we're talking about, his brother. Just as the brother-in-law has the ability to return a portion of the nefesh of his brother in this world through Yibum, so too does this brother-in-law have the ability to return the entire nefesh to him, together with the ruach and the neshama. However, it will be based upon good deeds, as it is written, if he were to set his heart against him. However, reincarnation that is not through Yibum does not have the ability to draw the three of them, only one at a time, as mentioned previously. In the beginning, the Nefesh will reincarnate alone until it becomes completely rectified and he dies. After that, the Ruach alone will reincarnate into a different body until it is rectified. The Nefesh will only reincarnate with it Besod Ibud, since it is already rectified, and it only comes to help it and for the good, not for the evil. Therefore, it receives a portion of the good deeds of the Ruach and not of the bad ones, in the manner written above, referring to the Nefesh itself, when all of it reincarnates with a specific part and dwells with it, Besod Ibur, etc. This explains how there can be an end to the reincarnations of the Nefesh, and it can become rectified, since it has no part in the sin of the Ruach, as mentioned. After that, he will die, and then the Neshama will reincarnate to rectify itself. The Nefesh and the Ruach will come with it, only Basad Ibur, as mentioned, until it is refined. Then there will no longer be any need for this person to reincarnate in this world. After all, for his own sake, though it is impossible for him to return Bisad Ibor in this world in another person during his lifetime to help and to cause him merit and receive a portion with him as mentioned above at length. Section Chapter 3, ty- Types of Rectification. That's what, Part 5, Sleep and Alternative. It will now be explained what was known at the beginning of the discussion, also be sought Gilgul, if there is a very pressing need, besought Gilgul by the secret of the holy angels who speak to a person. If there is a very pressing need, footnote 154, this is because the preferred method of rectification for the person who did not completely rectify his nefesh, ruach, and neshama in his first incarnation, as mentioned several times already, is to have the level of soul come to him only after he has rectified the previous level, died, and reincarnated again. It will be explained what was known at the beginning of the discussion, also besought Gilgul, if there is a very pressing need that the new reincarnation has some merit to achieve the three of them together, and Ruach and Neshama at one time in a single body, he will not require many reincarnations. He can complete the three of them in only one reincarnation. The matter is like this: when the nefesh first reincarnates alone, if it is rectified to the extent of complete refinement, The Ruach cannot come with it, as mentioned previously, since it is complete and the Ruach lacks rectification. There is, however, a solution since the Nefesh is already completely rectified, as mentioned, namely, when a person sleeps at night and deposits his Nefesh in his hand. Footnote 155. At night, when a person sleeps, his soul ascends to the above. May he be blessed. Footnote 156. When a person sleeps at night, levels of his soul ascend to heaven until he wakes up. See Derech Hashem, Section 3, Chapter 1, Part 6, for a more detailed discussion. As it is known, it is possible for the Nefesh to remain above clinging to the upper well. Be, Footnote 157. Hebrew, Bir Elion, a euphemism for the Malchus. Besod Mayan Nukvim, footnote 158, literally female waters. This phrase is usually abbreviated by using the first letter of each of the words, Mem Nun, and is pronounced Moon. It is the Kabbalistic phrase for the holy sparks that ascend to above, usually as a result of Torah learning and the performance, and in particular the prayers of righteous people, like water from the level of the Sephirah of Malchus, which is feminine. This is a crucial part of the world rectification process. As explained in Sha'ar HaTefillah, lying down at night, footnote 159, Sha'ar HaKavanos, Jreshi Halila, Jerush 10, see there. When he awakens from his sleep in the morning, the Ruach alone will enter him as if it reincarnated another time into a different body. It will continue until it is completely rectified, when the Nefesh will be able to return into the body as in the beginning. Since both are rectified, the Ruach will be clothed by the Nefesh, and the Nefesh will be a chariot for it. Footnote 160. The five levels of a soul are concentric spheres. The holier the level, the more external to the body it is. Therefore, the Ruach sits on top of the Nefesh as a person does in a chariot. After that, if the Ruach is completely refined, it is possible for both the Nefesh and the Ruach to leave the body at night during sleep and besought a deposit, as mentioned, and remain above. Then in the morning, when he awakens from his sleep, the neshama will enter him and become rectified. Once it has completed its rectification, the rectified nefesh and ruach will return, and the three of them will join together in a single body. This will become a chariot for the other. Footnote 161. Just as the Nefesh became a chariot for the Ruach, the two of them will become a chariot for the Neshama. As it is known, and there will be no need for further reincarnations. The matter of this rectification is alluded to in the verse, My soul. Footnote 162, Hebrew, Nefshi, literally, my Nefesh, Arabic, Nefsi. My soul, Nafsi, desired you during the night, as long as my spirit, uh, footnote 163, Hebrew, Ruki, literally my Ruach, or Ruhi, my Nefesh, my Nafsi, desire you during the night, as long as my Ruki, Ruhi, is within me, I seek you out. Yeshayahu 29a. This is the explanation. The level of my nefesh, once it becomes completely refined, basalt, and cling to him. Devarim 11:22, footnote 164. The verse, on a simple level, means that one should walk in the ways of the Torah and in doing so cling to God. On the level of Sod, it is understood to mean that the Nefesh can remain above after ascending there for the night, a form of clinging as well. Then I will desire you and greatly yearn to cling to you. So, read all at once. The matter of this rectification is alluded to in the verse, my soul desired you during the night. As long as my spirit is within me, I seek you out. Yeshayahu, or Joshua 26:9. This is the explanation. The level of my nefesh, once it becomes completely refined, besod, and cling to him, Devarim 11:22, then I will desire you and greatly yearn to cling to you. The matter of this desiring and yearning is at night, at the time of the deposit of the souls which ascend beside Mayan Nukvim to arouse an upper Zivul, footnote 166, literally upper pairing. The Sephiros work like gears in an engine. To some degree, it is possible for different Sephiros or part Zivim to be engaged, a Zivul, or disengaged, regulating the flow of divine light down into the lower realms depending upon the need of history and the spiritual opportunities created or taken advantage of by man below. Some are major zivujim, and some are minor, some permanent, and some only temporary. The topic of zivujim is discussed somewhat more in chapter 26. By force of this desire, since it, footnote 167, the nephesh, is refined, it is able to cling there with a complete clinging, remaining there and not descending, while morning arrives. When morning arrives, the time for the souls to descend, it will not go down. Rather, my Ruach will descend and enter me then in the morning. Therefore, I seek you out is not on the level of my nephesh, but rather on the level of my ruach, which then enters within me to become rectified, as mentioned. Hence, the Roche Tevos, footnote 168, literally head letters are the first letters of each of the words night, even, my ruach, uh, footnote 169, the Hebrew of the words from the verse, during night as long as my spirit, spell well, Well. Footnote 170, base, Elif, Resh, or Ba'ir, uh, or Bir, which means well, to allude to what was mentioned earlier, that my Nefesh desired you to ascend to the upper well as mentioned. So my note on well, Limerick, Lael, Mumtaz, Ruki, Kauthar. I think these are the night, even, my Ruach, well. So hence the Roshi Tevos, Limerick, of the words night, Lael, even, Mumtaz, my Ruach, Ruki, spell well, or Kauthar, and my note on upper well, Kauthar, which in I think chapter 111 of the Quran it says, "Inna a'tayna kal kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'aka hul abtar." Uh, really covering a topic we were covering about a man who arrives and does not have children. Verily, we have given you the upper well. So continue to pray, entreat, your Lord, the illumined one, he of many bright sparks. Verily, anyone who says you've not produced children, or anyone who speaks ill of you not producing children, makes fun of you for it, is himself cut off. So for in that case, for Muhammad, who comes from the Ishmaelite line from Abraham, uh, he is not known to have had children. He may have been Bisod Ibur Mikael, so there may have been something against him having them. He did produce two boys who were who died young, and he had his daughter Fatima, who may or may not have been his wife's daughter, or his, uh, but she's known to have been his daughter, with his wife Khadija. Thus, a person who knows his own that he completed the levels of the nefesh, it is correct for him to say the verse, "My soul desired you during the night." With all the intention mentioned above, when he lies on his bed, this way he will reach the salt of the Ruach and likewise the Neshama, and will not require other reincarnations. Understand this hidden secret and be careful with it. The verse that we say, however, in your hand I will deposit my soul, Tehillim 31:6, footnote 172, part of Kriyas Shema al Hamidah, saying of Shema in bed, does not help for what was mentioned because we only intend that our souls should ascend to the level of deposit only and return and descend the next morning. The verse, "My soul desired you," serves for the nefesh to remain above and for the ruach or the neshama to descend, as previously mentioned. Footnote 173, Shmuel says the matter of the verse, "My soul desired you," is explained in Sha'ar 6 of Sha'ar HaKevanos, Jurushi Halila, Chapter 10. See there later in Introduction 6 in another way. This also may have been one of the reasons why the prophet Samuel, or Shmuel, was not very happy with King Saul. Once the prophet Samuel had died and gone to the other world, King Saul uh, found some way to call his soul back, which is discussed at some part later in this book, and through the mediumship of probably one of the witches of Endor, I believe, is what it actually says. This is, I believe, in Samuel. And so, in doing so, that means Bisod, Ibur, possibly, he was brought forward in this body of this woman, of this witch, unless there were male witches there too, and to answer a question. But we don't know when he was able to leave that body. I mean, maybe she wasn't a bad person, so it would be very difficult for him to decide to leave it, in terms of his spirit being actively aware of what's going on and being brought forward to answer a question. And he's like, "Oh, I wish you hadn't done it this way, because now I have to be in this body um, until I decide that it's not beneficial for me to do." There is a book called um, Lumin, Lumin, which has a story from the 19th century. I have it on my YouTube page, Lumin. Uh, and so it talks about a man who was in the middle of teaching one of his students, who himself kind of came back upon the student for a little while and had a conversation with him about where he spends his time, whether near the upper well or in the Garden of Eden, where he spends his time and what's it's like, and how what the time difference is between where he goes and where he is, and why Even though it's only been like a night or so, it took him it was better for the young man to let him go. In a sense, don't ask me any more questions that I'm so intrigued that I want to answer them. So he could go visit his family in a similar way before withdrawing himself, I guess, farther away out of reach. But the prophet Samuel was within reach, and maybe he would have preferred that uh, he would have found a child medium to bring him through. So he could have grown up with that child. Okay, so what I've done is the verse that allows you, and this is the end of chapter 3, the verse that allows you this ability is in Isaiah. And I've learned, that's why he says, be careful with the secret. I've learned that it is a very strange verse in a sense that when you read it in every translation of Isaiah, I think it's 26:9, it reads very different than if you put it into Google Translate from Hebrew, and very different. And you begin to understand why. Because the prayer in Isaiah, as written, and there's no other. I mean, I wouldn't change it from. I wouldn't change the Hebrew of it. I've changed a translation. Basically, it's saying, um, I seek you out. But I seek you out so that you can be extinguished within me, almost, it says. A kind of an extinguishing, maybe an extinguishing of the fire of the sins that it's doing, or something like that. Come into the waters here and be extinguished, and then the mist rises up, and that's the spirit. But I take it as something that could be a negative. So, uh, Jewish people are told in the morning when they rise. One of the prayers that you absolutely do is the Shema. And in the evening, I'm recommending, because you also do it in the evening before you sleep. Uh, and so to add to the Shema, my version, or go to Isaiah 26:9 and read it and get it yourself. But that's the danger, I think, is in pronouncing the Hebrew with the intention of an extinguishing of your soul. Some people say it's not possible. Maybe it is. Maybe it puts it in purgatory. Maybe it's exactly as it should be. But I've just translated it into English because the Lord did say to the house of Israel um, that I am your God now, uniquely. However, I will be the God of many other peoples in the future. There will be one God, and it'll be He. So Shema Yisrael is usually translated as um, "Hear, O Israel," and there's a way of I took the Shema, which is in the book of Exodus, if I'm not mistaken, at the I think first or second chapter. I took it and I looked at the Hebrew, and I did a one-to-one transliteration from the Hebrew letter to an Arabic letter. Arabic has its roots in both Ugarit of Babylon, Iraq, and Persia, and it also has some roots in Proto-Coptic. So the ancient Egyptian language had a lot of Arabic in it. So Jews would have spoken it in both, or some version of it in both Egypt and in Babylon. So I did that, and then in doing so, I was able to read it. I can read Arabic. I don't read Hebrew just yet. And so I was able to read it. And here, Shema Yisrael, and I'm going to say the name. Uh, I believe there is a Levitical authority for me to say the name, though I say it different than other people do, the Yod He Vav He. Otherwise, people will say Adonai. Adonai means the Lord. Um, so, Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Ehad. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Ehad. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Ehad. I've translated it. Hear, mortals. He who is the Lord is our habitation. He who is the Lord is singular and unique. Hear, mortals, he who is the Lord is our habitation. He who is the Lord is singular and unique. Hear, mortals, he who is the Lord is our habitation. He who is the Lord is singular and unique. And then Isaiah 26:9, O my soul, I beseech thee in the night, in the midst of my spirit, in the midst of me. I will like a polished copper mirror, voortdurend en verdegri thee. Kindihirat for the Nefesh. O my soul, I beseech thee, in the night, in the midst of my spirit, in the midst of me, I will like a polished copper mirror, voortdurend en verdegri thee. Kindihirat for the Ruach. O my soul, I beseech thee, in the night, in the midst of my spirit, in the midst of me, I will, like a polished copper mirror, voortdurend en verdegri thee. Ken ye he ratzon for the neshama? And there are the other four as well, if you were to continue on and name them, which could be beneficial. So that is what I've been doing, and it seems to one, I've had very brilliant dreams. I think it's largely in part of using the Oculus 2, the MetaQuest 2, which presents a tremendous experience of vision that the brain can then mimic in so many ways when you sleep. But there's a practice that upon waking up, uh, have a basin or some type of water nearby, a bottle of water, and then just wash your hands over. And there's something about adding liquid to your hands when you wake up that uh, reaches you back from wherever you were in that sleep. I think what happens is our souls do travel to the upper world and they fall down into the bodies of other people. And so sometimes in our dream world, we are actually with a person, hopefully as a good spirit, while they're going through something difficult. So we're acting as angels. So sometimes when you're dreaming and you're making decisions, it may be it may be your mind working out a scenario for the corporation the next day and putting it in the form of a dream. It may be that you're on the other side of the earth where it's daylight, and for a few minutes you've been called in to support the thinking process of a person who's there. And so, if you can do that a bit more consciously, that person may go ahead and benefit from you. So, I read this. So, at night, my soul, the exchanger, the angel, maybe even the angel, or the angel of sleep, which the new series, Neil Gaiman's what? Well, it's well, he has a character dream and a character sleep, or a dream. That character is named Sleep, and by many, he's the angel of dreaming, the angel of sleep. And so he is the brother of death. And so the angel dreaming, angel of sleep, will hear the prayer and know that he has permission to exchange out your souls as best he needs to. So this is Isaiah 26:9. Thank you for listening.